Who are the best waiver wire additions for Week 11 in fantasy football across positions, leading with a bunch of wide receivers? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We have Week 10 in the books. The Eagles no longer undefeated. What a weird result that was. The Commanders dominate time of possession on the ground. Here, Antonio Gibson grinds them to victory here. A lot of Joey Sly field goals. Meanwhile, the Eagles end up turning the ball over 4 times. They'd previously turned the ball over 3 times all season. A.J. Brown gets hurt. Dallas Goedert gets a touchdown, gets hurt. It was a tough night for sure. If you had the Eagles out there and their offense, you expected bigger things. At least Hurts came through with the passing touchdowns and the rushing score there for you in fantasy, but it was brutal to watch. The Commanders might have a little bit more upside than we think going forward. They do get the Texans this week, so a good matchup there. The Eagles will move on with the Colts. So a lot of unexpected things can happen here. We know in the NFL, we know our fantasy football teams also could use help and could keep getting better, much like the Eagles. No team is perfect, and that's why we want to focus on our waiver wire here for week number 11. We'll get into it. We'll start with wide receivers. That's the dominant position of the week. Then we'll get into running backs and streaming defenses, then close the show looking at some quarterback and tight end help you can get on waivers this week, whether you're using waiver priority or your fab free agent acquisition budget with what's left of it in this late stage of the season. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. They score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, let's dive right into the wide receivers, shall we? 2 breakout games for sure that are going to lead to heavy acquisitions of these players. And it's not just chasing the points from last week. I think they have viable value going forward. Christian Watson, the rookie for the Packers, he became the first rookie ever to score his first 3 touchdowns of his career in the same game. They kept going to him away from Trayvon Diggs, playing off the running game, the run-heavy approach there for the Packers. They didn't throw all that much. But Christian Watson was on the end of the 3 scores, including a couple deep shots there from Aaron Rodgers. So Romeo Doubs went on the shelf, and immediately they pivoted rookies to the healthy one, Watson, and made some big plays with him. And Watson has had some injury issues before. He's been in concussion protocol of late. He's had that preseason stuff, but they took him 34th overall. We thought Watson could be the direct replacement to Devontae Adams once they made that pick. There he lit up the combine. We thought, okay, he's on his way here. Then it was a bit of a struggle in the early part of the offseason, staying healthy and then getting on the field for training camp. So it's been a slow process here for Watson, but Dobbs going down at the same time. Alan Lazard playing through a shoulder injury. Randall Cobb could return here soon, as early as this week. I doubt it here. It's a short turnaround for Thursday Night Football in Week 11, but the matchup was pretty good against the Titans. Watson is now doctrined into the offense. And most important, Rodgers has his trust all over the field. So you can't ignore Christian Watson anymore. We were on Dobbs, and he seemed to be on his way to having a key role, but quick pivot there for Rodgers. So we need to make that quick pivot as well. Watson wasn't doing all that much, but they clearly had a plan to get him going as a big play threat, playing off the running game and play action, and that happened. So I don't think the Packers are going to deviate that much from that. So Al Lazard still has value, but maybe a little bit touchdown dependent as he's been all season long here and getting the inconsistent targets. But Watson also is going to be up and down. He's a big play threat. Keep that in mind. But if there's a big play to be had off play action, Watson has an opportunity, and the Titans certainly can give up those plays downfield, as we saw last week to the Broncos, giving up that long score. So Watson definitely in play this week. Kadarius Toney is the other buzzy wide receiver. He's a second-year player, not a rookie, but for all intents and purposes, he's a rookie because the first round pick of the Giants kind of flamed out there, didn't really play at all this season with his injury. All of a sudden, he's fully healthy and playing for the Chiefs, while Miko Hardman, an abdomen injury, Juju Smith-Schuster, the concussion, they're banged up. Marcus Valdes-Scantling hasn't been fully healthy. So Kadarius Toney being worked in right away as a Chiefs key target here. So good to see that, and getting some run in the rushing attack as well, as they've kind of abandoned Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that situation. So Toney and a lot of playmaking juice, looked outstanding last week against the Jaguars. That's only going to get more opportunities starting this week against the Chargers. Hardman didn't practice at all last week, so it might be a while. He has a similar injury to what Marshawn Lattimore has for the Saints, so that has been a multiple-week injury we know there. Juju should miss at least one game from that hard hit from Andre Cisco, the Jaguars safety from last week. So Toney has a big opportunity to see a good target share and opportunity point here behind Travis Kelce in this passing game for the best quarterback in the league and the MVP front runner, Patrick Mahomes. All right. Donovan Peoples-Jones quietly has put together a fine month of production. He hasn't been lighting it up, but for wide receiver 3, Peoples-Jones has been outstanding here with decent volume, good yardage here. He had a season-high 99 yards against the Dolphins, working away from Xavier Howard, as Howard was on Amari Cooper. And we know that he's a big play threat, so that's going to help in a couple weeks when Deshaun Watson returns this week. The matchup is a little bit difficult against the Bills, but that could also mean that they shut down Cooper and Peoples-Jones get some garbage time, which has been a kind of a staple of what they do in the passing game when they have to have high volume in games they trail. So that's happened the last several weeks here. And he also looked really good in the game that they won against the Bengals of late. So Peoples-Jones in a great situation here as he keeps rising with his talent as the outside number 2, and Watson's big arm is going to only help him. So a sneaky player that should be managed in all size leagues at this point as a sneaky wide receiver 3 regular option. Darius Slayton, I think we've all been Wan'Dale Robinson quite a bit, and we get it. We love Wan'Dale Robinson's talent. He's a rookie. He's buzzy out of Kentucky. But Slayton is the guy quietly putting up numbers the past 3 weeks here as the answer for this Giants receiving core. Kenny Golladay was available, but that didn't mean anything. Slayton was still the main guy here. And keep in mind, this is what we've forgotten, is that they had good chemistry. Slayton, Daniel Jones from 2019, when they were both rookies. Slayton had a pretty good year. He's had some injuries and been buried on the depth chart, but guess what? They've kept him around. They've needed him. He started to produce again. They get the Lions this week. So great matchup on the outside for Slayton. Great move he made last week against the Texans, getting the short pass in the open field, going the distance. So Slayton's a player, and I think he's kind of been a lost man in this passing game for the Giants, but they found him for sure, and they need him, and he's kind of emerged as their number 1 outside threat. So much as we buzz about Robinson, he's not a bad deep stash in leagues, hoping that he can get going at some point, especially with Daniel Bellinger still not ready to return from his eye injury. But I'm all over Darius Slayton here. He's just being too involved and too productive of late. Same thing goes for Parris Campbell. I think the shine has fallen off the rookie Alec Pierce, just not being able to push the ball downfield as much. So they need to go more underneath. Parris Campbell's kind of in that possession receiver with some juice. He scored a touchdown last week, very good volume, 7 for 78 against the Raiders in that matchup. Matt Ryan trusts him. They're getting him involved. He's a playmaker in the open field. He plays well off the size and strength of Michael Pittman as a big receiver there as a possession guy. So Campbell playing off well. So fade to Pierce quite a bit. Go with Campbell a little bit more in this Colts passing game. And Campbell also has a better spot to produce here versus Pittman and Pierce as they get Darius Slay and James Bradbury the outside. You can burn the Eagles a little bit more at the slot and that type of player. So Campbell really lines up to be rather productive, kind of as a poor man's Curtis Samuel that has some value going forward. DeAndre Carter is kind of in that same mode. Another former Commanders player here. He's got some juice. He got a touchdown for the first time since week 1. He scored there for the Chargers against the 49ers. He almost scored a second time. They ran it in after that. But when you're looking at Henry Carter, still no Keenan Allen, still no Mike Williams. We've been on Josh Palmer, easy no-brainer there. But Carter getting a little bit more involved out of necessity, especially with the injuries now to Donald Parham Jr. and Gerald Everett at tight end. They need Carter a little bit more. So you look at this matchup against the Chiefs, should be quite involved with potential high volume for Justin Herbert. We also look at Nico Collins, 10 targets. That was the season high. Came back from the growing injury, looked connected with Davis Mills. They get the Commanders this week. So another Michigan receiver there with DPJ that we're looking at. I like Collins quite a bit. I was on him a little bit earlier, but then he kind of faded. Then the Brandon Cooks thing happened to help Collins get back, but then he had the growing injury. So, and I think Nico Collins has a little bit of value going forward here. And as the Texans are going to keep throwing a ton, and that won't change here. And really, Mills, they're not going to change him at quarterback, which is good for now because Mills really wants to push the ball to Collins. So that's something to look at as well. So garbage time always going to be available for the Texans. They're going to throw quite a bit when they're not running Dameon Pierce when they're still in games. So Collins might be the bigger beneficiary going forward with Brandon Cooks kind of phasing out. I like Treylon Burks. I know Nick Westbrook-Akine was the dazzle guy with the 2 touchdowns against the Broncos, but Treylon Burks is the guy they want to get going. Just got his feet wet returning from the turf toe injury. Michael Gallup, you're looking at him maybe becoming a big play threat with CeeDee Lamb dominating and Dak Prescott playing a little better. Terrace Marshall Jr., a little bit of value as well there for the Panthers, as we've seen as the number 2 receiver there, and maybe a little helped by Baker Mayfield playing this week against the Ravens. You have, again, Wando Robinson, the lower end guy, stash guy. You can look at it as Odell Beckham Jr. I'm not sure if he's going to sign anywhere quite yet, but has some promise now with some injuries popping up. And Jameson Williams, again, he's another stash as you can look at with OBJ. All right. There you have it. There's a look at your wide receiver targets here for the week, and a lot of good stuff out there that you can help your team with at the back end of your roster, creating some depth, maybe some starting streaming options here. You've got things to help you at that position for sure. We'll get into running backs and streaming defenses in our next segment. We told you at the top that this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks, and every Friday we give you the Prize Picks picks of the week. We went 4 for 5 last week, and really it is daily fantasy that's better than ever and easier than ever for you. You make entries on Prize Picks based on player projections. If they go more or less, then you can win, and you can win up to 10 times your money there. So you just pick 2 to 5 players, and they go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry, no competing against other people. It's just you versus projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's not just the NFL, but we know NBA and NHL full swing of the regular season. MLB we're going to have to wait for, but we still have golf. We still have college sports here with football and basketball now, and the soccer with the World Cup. So a lot of good things coming up here with Prize Picks to take advantage of. Entries can be made on prizepicks.com in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in more than 30 states in Canada, so most likely you can play Prize Picks. All you have to do is download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% deposit instant match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for instant deposit match for up to $100 only at prizepicks.com. And if you've thought about securing your home with home security, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Fantasy Football listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Here's why I love it. You can trust Simply Safe completely. They are always there to keep you and your family safe, and we know our family comes first, whether that's helping us avert a break-in, which is always discomforting, but it's also because they're on top of things with their top-notch technology and their great team that's providing 24/7 support with a monitoring agent there. So this is why Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for a 3rd year in a row. Really, their professionals are there for you whenever you need them. Again, whether it's tech support or monitoring, they've got your back in an emergency 24/7. They use Fast Protect technology, exclusively to Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I would recommend, and it's the best deal for it. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system or simplysafe.com slash locked on NFL. That's simplysafe.com slash locked on NFL. So definitely check that out here. And it's good stuff for you to make sure that you're good to go this holiday season. So there's no safe like Simply Safe. And again, simplysafe.com slash locked on NFL. Their biggest discount of the year. So do not wait. Go to simplysafe.com now. All right, it is time to continue the show looking at the waiver wire here for week number 11. We will get into the running backs and defensive streamers here in our next segment. Before we do that, thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For a second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the big games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's go over our running backs. And this is probably the last call for Isaiah Pacheco. He's definitely the chief starter. We saw that coming out of the bye. He definitely got the key work against the Jaguars. Jerick McKinnon in deeper leagues. Can we look at the passing game back, only in PPR leagues? But Clyde Edwards only 4 snaps in the game, no touches. Pacheco and McKinnon have successfully forced Edwards-Helaire out of the equation. He's not good enough as a receiver right now for the Chiefs, what they want. Pacheco is the better speedy power back, so that's how they're going. So Pacheco definitely in a good spot here. They're playing the Chargers this week, so a team that you can run on. And we've seen with Andy Reid teams in the past, November, December, they run the ball a little bit more. So Isaiah Pacheco, last call for him. Last call for Rachaad White. Leonard Fournette is expected to be okay with a hip injury. The Buccaneers have a bye in week 11. Rachaad White ran for more than 100 yards. It was still a pretty even split here. They were rotating series with Fournette and White. They're not going to totally disappear from that because one thing White has not done, really is capable of doing it, is catching passes. They had to bring Keyshawn Vaughn. They don't completely trust Rachaad White in pass protection, so the Bucs are going to have to play with the lead. The good news is I think that will happen a little bit more often down the stretch here now that this offense is getting a little bit revved up here, so that could be more opportunities for Fournette and White. So last chance for the rookie White as well as the rookie Pacheco. Gus Edwards may have been dropped for some leaguers, so know that the hamstring injury and didn't have room for him during the Ravens bye, but he should be back. That's the optimism here from John Harbaugh and his coaching staff against the Panthers in a potential smash spot this week. So if Edwards is out there, jump, run to go get him, even in 10-team leagues. Jaylen Warren, we thought about a potential takeover. I know Najee Harris was probably motivated, ran pretty well, but Jaylen Warren was still quite a bit involved. He was the better receiver, and he had some juice that way. And that's the thing that we look at is we can try to grind those 90 to 100 yards on the ground, but it's so much easier when we're doing half point, full point PPR if a player's making some big catches, and Jaylen Warren did that. So when you look at it, scale back and look at the half point versus what Harris did without a touchdown, they were pretty even last week in terms of fantasy football production. So Jaylen Warren is still going to get a little bit of run, gives it a little extra pop in the running game and passing game here. So Warren, again, should be at least managing the Harris handcuff, and I think it could be a little bit more than that here in standalone and PPR leading leagues. Kyren Williams or Cam Akers, the Rams lost Cooper Kupp to that ankle injury, so they might be on the run a little bit more. They've been eager to get Kyren Williams going here. Akers, Darrell Henderson Jr., they actually got rid of Malcolm Brown here, so all signs have been pointing to unleashing Williams. They have nothing to lose at this point. They need to evaluate their team. They only have 3 wins. There's no cup. We'll see about Matthew Stafford returning this week. So they really need to do what they can. And the Saints' run defense really reeled last week there in that loss to the Steelers against Warren and Harris. So some opportunity there for the Rams running game. Last chance for all your key handcuffs here. That includes Alexander Madison behind Dalvin Cook, Kenneth Gainwell behind Miles Sanders, James Cook, not Nyheim Hines, behind Devin Singletary, Isaiah Spiller behind Austin Eckler. So make sure you're lining up all the reasonable handcuffs. If Elijah Mitchell's still out there in your leagues, and he could be, you make sure you get him behind Christian McCaffrey. I know they played pretty even here, but again, protect all your investments as much as possible, even as low as like a Matt Breida for Saquon Barkley. If you know there's a clear-cut guy, go after that player that can give you some value should that starter go down here down the stretch. in the key time of the fantasy football regular season into the playoffs. All right, that's all the running backs. Again, more of the buzz with wide receivers this week, but Pacheco and White, again, should be off the waivers for good after this week. If someone dropped the Patriots or Ravens because of roster room, go jump on them. The Patriots get the Jets at home. The Ravens get the Panthers at home. Great matchups this week. They're shallow leagues. They both might be available, or at least one to go after this week. The Giants also could be dropped here because of those Patriots and Ravens returning, as they were a streamer. They get the Lions this week after playing the Texans at home last week. So Giants can return some good value. Again, Jets are playing at the Patriots, so that's a sneaky alternative if you cannot access the Patriots this week, playing against Mac Jones with Sauce Gardner and their defense making plays. The Commanders' defense started to play well. 4 turnovers and a random late touchdown by Casey Toohill against the Eagles. So Commanders' defense has actually started to play pretty well the past 2 weeks. They forced some turnovers of Kirk Cousins as well. This is a terrible turnover-creating team, but all of a sudden that is happening now for the Commanders, and they get the Texans this week and Davis Mills, who's been a sieve of turnovers, and we know the Giants got all over him last week, and Chase Young could return to help that pass rush as well for the Commanders. The Bengals get Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. I know Pickett was pretty clean, so I wouldn't totally go nuts about Pickett, but I do like the Steelers' defense a little bit. They did have a big game against Joe Burrow and no Jamar Chase, and plus the Steelers playing at home could give some sneaky value even in a tough offensive matchup. And the Saints facing the short-handed Rams. We'll see if John Wolford is out there again. Doesn't really matter. Matthew Stafford, that offensive line is going to get destroyed by the Saints defensive line. So sneaky streamer this week on the opposite side of the Rams here. Another good play in week number 11. All right, that takes care of the running backs and streaming defenses here you can look at in week number 11. We still need to talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends. Not a lot out there, but again, key injuries that you need to recover from, namely Zach Ertz going down for the season with a knee injury for the Cardinals. Can we pause the pod for a second? Okay, we're paused. Great, because you got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors. They include cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, white chocolate, peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty, and candy cane brownie puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever. Built, they're revolutionizing nutrition, as we know, with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, chocolate, low sugar and calories, 130 calories. Just sink your teeth into that first bite, and it'll change your life forever. I'm not kidding. There'll be time before you try these new Built Bar flavors and the magical, wonderful time afterward. You're probably wondering which new flavor is my favorite. Well, it's an unanswerable question, to say the least. They're all unbelievable. They're all different, so you can order a mix box and try all the 5 flavors for yourself. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 only at Built.com to get in on Built Bars and Built Puffs. All right, it is time to close the show looking at the quarterbacks and tight ends that we want to target on the waiver wire. Deshaun Watson, your ultimate stash. If you got a playoff team, you need a little bit of upside quarterback. He's coming back in week 13 against the Texans, so only 2 more games without Watson for the Browns. He's going to immediately be the starter. He can return to the practice field, so that's good this week. So Watson immediately, we know he's a QB1, and he's going to deliver that down the stretch for sure with his running and passing. Marcus Mariota, a great streamer this week at home against the Bears. That should be a high-scoring game. That's an over-under in the 50s. So you've got Mariota versus Justin Fields running and a little bit more running, maybe a few big plays. That's what you're going to get. It's kind of a Spider-Man meme of potential running quarterbacks with running games and bad defenses, giving up some big plays downfield. The Mariota I like. Taylor Heinicke in a great spot. If you're looking at Davis Mills, potentially the stream against the Commanders, now you can look at Taylor Heinicke on the other side. There against the Texans. He's going to keep the job for sure, no matter what happens with Carson Wentz. I don't think he's ready to return. So another good player to look at. Look at Matt Ryan this week as well. He's a guy you can add. I would not start him against the Eagles, but definitely inspired a little bit. Didn't see a lot of key volume there. He did have a nice run of all things there, placing Sam Ehlinger. Also had that touchdown pass to Campbell. So Matt Ryan back in play, but I would not look at him this week, even though it's a homecoming game of sorts at home against the Eagles. He's from the Philadelphia area, so I'm still not going to play him this week. Ryan Tannehill, you can look at a little bit more. They do get the Packers this week, and Tannehill at least playing off the run and putting up some numbers. We want him to run a little bit more to get some numbers to be good back end QB1, but maybe not this week in a short week on the road against Green Bay's defense. Looking at tight end, if people drop Hayden Hurst because of the Bengals bye, he's available out there. Look at him. And again, this team is without Jamar Chase probably for at least one more game. Hurst working underneath there with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins in a good matchup against the Steelers this week. Isaiah Likely. Now, Mark Andrews is likely back this week from his knee and shoulder injuries, but they got to keep Likely more involved in the offense. They don't really have a lot behind Mark Andrews and Devin Duvernay. So this could keep more 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. We're likely act as a wide receiver hybrid here. So something to watch out there, but likely at least is a high-end handcuff now, we know, for Andrews. Foster Moreau is your high-end handcuff for Darren Waller. He scored last week. The Raiders do get the Broncos. That's a matchup that it's exploitable for the tight end with no Justin Simmons there. So you like that. Juwan Johnson has been a key target for Andy Dalton here. We'll see if they make the change, but we know Jameis Winston's also gotten big games with Juwan Johnson at tight end. Adam Troutman hurting, Taysom Hill not a traditional tight end. They do get a matchup. However, that's kind of tough against the Rams and Ernest Jones in coverage this week. Trey McBride, if you lost Zach Ertz, just look directly behind him to the rookie from Colorado State. Very special player here that could get a little bit more run as the Cardinals kind of see what they have in the future. Ertz did resign here, but he's getting a little older. Another injury issue here. They're not going to keep Max Williams. They're probably going to look more at McBride going forward there to help DeAndre Hopkins and Rondell Moore with no Marquise Brown. Look at Austin Hooper. He's getting a little bit more run with Tannehill back, playing off their wide receivers there. We thought he would have a bigger role in Tennessee, not quite materializing yet, but in deeper leagues, you can look there. If people drop Tyler Conklin during the Jets bye, you can also explore him and his potential there for that team. Mike Gesicki is also a guy, again, bye week for the Dolphins. If he's out of sight, out of mind, maybe somebody can pick up the stretch run. This week, Cade Otton as well has looked pretty good for the Buccaneers as a rookie and should get more work here after the Week 11 bye. No Fant got revved up quite a bit the previous 2 weeks, so that's going to help Fant finish strong here in Seattle with Geno Smith. So there you have it. There's a breakdown of your Week 11 waiver wire depth across positions. Again, wide receivers dominate, but you can find help at the other positions for sure, like you can every week, depending on the size of your league, the needs of your team. There are always options for you to keep upgrading, at least your bench, if not your starting lineups here in fantasy football. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports podcast. That's Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer looking at our Pickup Tuesday with the Week 11 waiver wire. We'll come back tomorrow, start breaking down the quarterbacks and running backs and their matchup start-sit advice there on Matchup Wednesday here on Locked On Fantasy Football.